you obviously shot on many different types of trains, varying degrees of comfort and cleanliness. Was the idea to, can you talk a little bit about that? Was the idea to arrive at a cross-section portrait of China today? You shot over 2 years, I know.
Yeah, 3 years. I mean, I think there was a very basic kind of salvage ethnography going on, because the trains that you see, like with the livers and the meats hanging, that's a train that no longer exists. Those green skin trains from the collectivist era are being taken out, although they are still utilized in certain moments and certain areas for inexpensive travel for migrant workers, especially during Spring Festival. And that's when I was first riding trains. We're riding trains like that, when you can open up the window and smoke a cigarette. And there's a whole sort of literature and journalism right now in China about trying to remember the experience of that train travel. So there's definitely that involved. And then you can't ignore the bullet train, the contrast, not only within China, but also back home, because where I'm from, you can't catch a train anywhere. And in China, you have these bullet trains that are zipping up and down the eastern seaboard and connecting, like Beijing and Changsha, which would normally be like, back when I first went to China, would be maybe a 48-hour train ride, is now 6 hours.
How much did you shoot? And can you talk a little bit about the editing process and arriving at the shape and structure of the film?
I shot probably, it's hard to know these days because with HD you don't have those 16mm cans or those DV tapes. So you can't physically see the hours stacked up in front of you, but I think I shot about 200 hours over the 3 years. And originally I had this idea of making a 3-part structure that would be trains through the landscape, kind of in dialogue with James Benning's RR, which is his last 16mm film, which is trains in the American landscape moving across the frame, and then going into something that was much more sort of visceral and machine and organic, sort of melding together, and then this sort of burst of dialogue and conversation and language that you see. But I decided to jettison all of that because it seemed to be a little bit unwieldy, and I wanted to, because the way that I operate when I'm editing is to sort of cut away as much as I can, rather than sort of accreting something quite large. I thought it would be a challenge to remain completely in the train, even though I had hours and hours of stations and ticket sellers and platforms and trains moving across these beautiful snow-capped landscapes that I'm sure I would love to share with you, maybe in another form at another time. I wanted to create that kind of constraint to sort of, and it's almost arbitrary in a way. I mean, it creates a particular kind of claustrophobic effect, but once you set that in motion, it's just one way to sort of break dirt and begin to build the film.
Can you talk about the title of the film? Is that in reference to the, well, actually, can you talk about the title?
I usually have really terrible titles for films, and I don't know if this one is successful or not, but it started, I had it like right away from the beginning of wanting to make this film. And it's first from, of course, the Ministry of Railways, which, if anybody is familiar with the Chinese government, it was a bureau of the Chinese government with its own sort of set of rules, its own court system, schools, factories, police, judges, and it had like, it was almost like a kingdom within a kingdom. So there's this sort of opaque kind of, I don't know, monstrosity existing within this already very complicated government system. And during the filming, coincidentally, during the shooting of this film, that bureau was dismantled. I don't know if you guys know about the corruption cases of Liu Zhijun, the guy that ran. He was the last person to run, or was second to last person to run the ministry, and now it's been sort of split apart into the China Railway Corporation and dispersed among the elites in China's leadership. It's not really clear who's calling the shots, but it's a different kind of entity now. It's becoming privatized. And so the iron is like a throwback to the iron bowl of collectivism. It's also iron because it's directly related to the railway system. You know, the iron rooster, the iron horse, the iron dragon, which actually came after the title of the Iron Ministry. And then there's also this sort of scientific, rational sort of set of values or ideologies that is being attempted to be spread throughout China, right, by the expansion of this system, of this railway system. There's a way in which that sort of snakes out and creates a kind of network of a particular rationale. that then, of course, is actually, ridden, or the passengers themselves have a different relationship that complicates and maybe subverts those various attempts at some kind of regulation and spreading of a particular value in almost like a missionary type style.
Well, we can take